Is that better? Okay, you want to try mine?
Sure.
Speak loudly.
We're not going to talk at the same time, so we can just share this microphone. My name is Jason Tisch. I work at the State Historic Preservation Office. Um, my colleague Elizabeth Hilton is with me tonight. The purpose of this meeting is to convey information about the potential listing of what's the name of the district? Saks.
North Sax Woods.
North Sax Woods. Um, Historic district in the National Register of Historic Places. This is a brand newly identified historic district, identified in the survey of Middleton that was recently completed, and it's not even quite completed. It's going to be completed and finalized in the next month or so. So this is brand new identification of a historic district. Can we get the first slide, Elizabeth? So what we're going to cover, we'll talk about a little bit about Middleton as a certified local government, a CLG partner, and what that means. CLG grant funding, the funding that's available to certified local governments in the form of no-match grants. And then Elizabeth is the National Register Coordinator for the state of Wisconsin. She's the expert on the National Register and all the implications of that. And she will talk about what it means for this district to be listed in the National Register. Go ahead, Elizabeth. So Middleton became a certified local government in 1992. Oh, I forgot to change Reedsburg to Middleton. Sorry, that should say Middleton. We did Reedsburg on Monday. That is accurate information about Middleton, however. In 1996, Middleton used certified local government funding to do a survey of the entire city about 30 years ago. 1998, the city used CLG funding to designate the Depot and the Rowley House in the National Register. 2002, the city got another grant to designate the East End Historic District. 2024, the city got a grant to do a survey update, to update that 1996 survey and reevaluate what's the properties citywide and see if anything else has gained that significance in the last 30 years. That survey, as I said, is finishing up soon, within the next month. We should have a final survey report from that survey. And in 2026, the city is considering applying for a grant. I think they probably will apply for a grant to designate the Saks, say it again.
North Sax Woods, Pheasant Hills Historic District.
Thank you, that one. So the city will apply for a grant to designate that district. So this meeting is an invitation to property owners in that neighborhood, in that historic district, to learn about what the National Register is, what it entails. So, next slide, Elizabeth. Just briefly, CLG grant funding. I've talked about CLG grant funding. Grant funding is on an annual cycle for certified local government partners. We have 78 certified local government partners throughout the state. Grant funding can be used for these five things: surveys, National Register nominations, historic preservation plans, design guidelines. I won't get into that because that's not the issue tonight, and educational projects. So Middleton has access to CLG grant funding for those types of projects, and this is one of those. Go ahead, Elizabeth. This is Elizabeth's phase of the presentation.
Yes, so can you hear me okay on this one? All right. Well, I've got to say I'm really excited to be here because I'm one of your neighbors. I wish I lived in your historic district, but I've lived in Middleton for about 9 years now, and I love it here. Jason gets to hear about it all the time. But I've been involved in historic preservation for over 20 years. Been working at the state, and as the National Register coordinator, I'll be able to inform you on what the National Register of Historic Places is. So, it is an official list of places that are significant to our history. And that can be for architecture, archaeology, engineering, or culture that is important to your community. It was signed by President Johnson into the National Historic Preservation Act in 1966. And that's because that's when there was a lot of urban renewal going around, where they were tearing down historic corridors, and people were crying out and saying, we want to keep some of our historic places. So this was a way to identify those historic and significant places. So when we think about National Register properties, you might think of a lovely Queen Anne residence that's near the downtown area. But you also have other areas like Lizard Mound State Park of effigy mound groupings. You have parks and places significant for horticulture. You have stone bridges, or even public housing is significant to some properties in the community. So here in Middleton, we have a few places already that Jason went over. Of course, the Easton Historic District over here. This is on Hubbard Avenue and Park Street that wraps around, or excuse me, Elmwood and Park Street and wraps around Hubbard Avenue. So we already have a residential district here. We also have the Historical Society next door, of the Rowley House. He was quite a significant person in our community. And his four generations of doctors that lived here too. And then, of course, we have the depot, significant for transportation, as well as a late Victorian example of a depot. And there are two archaeological sites that are located in Middleton as well. The archaeology places are usually address restricted, but one of them is a local landmark. So the National Register is purely an honorific designation. It's just calling out, hey, you've got a significant property. But it can provide limited protection if a property is involved with a federally funded or state funded license activity. So, what that means is if WISDOT was coming down your street and was going to widen it, they are required by law to identify whether that project is going to have an adverse effect on significant properties, historic properties. So it will help try to avoid disrupting those properties. You can also get tax credit financing, which is the most exciting thing about being listed in the National Register. Jason's going to talk about that a little later. And you can also brag and put a plaque on your property, which the Rally House has done. So how do we determine if a property is eligible? Well, the National Park Service facilitates this program. And they have produced a very thick bulletin that provides guidelines for how to evaluate properties. So there's 4 sets of criteria that we'll step through to help explain those. But in order for a property to be eligible, it must retain sufficient integrity. So integrity, we're talking about design, materials, workmanship. It doesn't have to be 100% of what it was when it was originally built, but you still need to get that sense of what it was and why it's important. It has those nice architectural details on it. So the first criterion is A, and that is the association with a single event, patterns of events, or historic trends. So that could be a specific event in a community, like the founding of a town. Patterns of events could be a broad pattern of education with the one-room schoolhouse, and then you have graded schools, and then you have gyms, of how that's evolved over time. And then you have historic trends too. That would be commerce, trade, um, industry, which is one of these properties that's highlighted up there. We just recently listed the Woodmer's Cheese Factory up in Theresa in Dodge County. And if you haven't had their cheese yet, you've got to go get some. It's delicious. But it is 4 generations of cheesemakers, and they wanted to honor their family's history. So with cheese making, it's not just one building. They evolve over time. This one has 16 additions because of the industry changes, the having to meet FDA standards, having new materials. Um, and so this was a really fun project to work on, but this is an example of criterion A. And then criterion B, that's the association with significant people who have made an impact in your community, either at the local, state, or national level. And my favorite example is, of course, Vince Lombardi. Does anybody not know who Vince Lombardi is? Yeah, that's what I thought. We listed his house a couple years ago, and we found it eligible because not only was he a Packer coach, but he was the best Packer coach and general manager. He took a losing team to win 5 national championships and 3 back-to-back, 2 Super Bowls. The only team who has done that, right? Um, and ESPN called him the coach of the century. So he's clearly important outside the state of Wisconsin. Um, Other examples could be a local artist, a lumber baron, or like Dr. Raleigh next door. That house was significant for him as well. And then criterion C is significant for its physical design or construction. So you can think about your Queen Anne house down the road, your Victorian house, but you can also think of bridges. This is a railroad truss bridge in Eau Claire that we recently listed. It's significant for its design. We also list farmsteads, so a collection of buildings that together create that significance with the original farmhouse and the big barn and the milk house and the privy and the corn crib and the silos. Together, it's representing what a dairy farm was, and that's really important. And the third farm that was in New London, that was interesting because it was originally on land for a fairgrounds. But that's not why the original house is significant. It's significant because it details what a dairy farm was at the time. And then, of course, we have Frank Lloyd Wright. So we also list master architects. And of course, he's our favorite one here in Wisconsin. So we look at that as well. And then criterion D, this is completely centered around archaeology. And these are properties that have the potential to yield prehistoric or historic information. So this could be Native American affiliated. It could be from the late 1800s, early 1900s. It all depends on what we're looking at. Here, my children are visiting Aztalan State Park. That is a really significant place in our state. There you have burial mounds, you have forts. So where my daughter's standing, those are piles where they needed to barricade their area so that they had a defensive standpoint on the land. So they were fighting other tribes. There's also a river down there where they would catch their food. So it has a lot to tell us, and that has the potential to tell us even more information. So, what is a historic district? Well, the Park Service will tell you right there what they consider a district, a significant concentration of buildings that are historically important. So, what that is really, when you're in a historic district, versus outside of a historic district. You have that collection of buildings that have similar design, similar time period, and they're really defined by that. So we do have archaeological districts. This is Rock Island. That is listed. But of course, we have residential districts while we're here today. So we could have a small district of only 12. Or you can have an entire development that was platted, kind of like Middleton Hills one day. That has been determined eligible to be a National Register Historic District when it gets a little older. But within districts, you have contributors and you have non-contributors. And contributors are properties that add to that cohesive character. They retain integrity. You can see that it was originally built as a ranch house and what those features were. Whereas a non-contributor would be a property that's brand new, was not built in the same time period, was not built in similar styles, or has been severely altered such that the original design is no longer recognizable. We also have commercial historic districts that come in all shapes and sizes. But here is why we're here today, the North Sex Woods-Pheasant Hills Historic District. So you will see you have a branch street that crosses the main line there, and you have the Sax Woods. Now, it was named after, I want to call him Sarkeesian, but it's only because thank you, I'm watching too much football. So it was named after him, and it was completely wooded, and that's how you get the Sax Woods. He then started a trailer town where there was a recreation hall, there were bathrooms, there were running water, there was laundry. He created all that. And then soon after that, after World War II, then you start seeing the actual plats and the properties coming up post-war. And now on the right-hand side, the eastern side, that's where you get the Pheasant Hills Historic District. That's why it has the two names. We like to provide some context for the neighborhood, and that's why it was given that name. But we crossed Branch Street to include those properties because they were also designed in the same style. You'll see the same architectural elements on the east side of Branch Street that you will see on the west side. So it really feels like you're in this community, this really nice residential area. So how do we list a property? Well, you will have people that'll go out and survey, take pictures, do research, drive by Vince Lombardi's home or your home. We're not going in your house at all. We're staying by the public right of way. And after we go through the permits and learn a lot of information about your property and the neighborhood, it is then prepared on a National Register form. So here's our thick bulletin that guides us on how to fill that out. We often recommend hiring a consultant, which is what the grant funding would do, is to hire someone who's done this plenty of times and they know what they're doing to get it listed. But in order to be on the state register, which is the first step, the State Historic Preservation Review Board meets 4 times a year, and it is governor appointed. It is made up of professionals that live across the state. So you will have architects, you will have historians, you will have anthropologists, you will have professors, practicers, and they all come together and vote on whether it should be listed. And at that time, it is on the state register. When that happens, which is approximately about a year from when start to finish, that's when you can officially start claiming your tax credits that Jason will talk about. But after that, it then goes to the Park Service, and a couple months later, they will then declare it on the National Register. But there are a lot of misconceptions about the National Register. It's easy to conflate them with local landmarks. And so we just want to make sure you have all the information and you're aware of what the National Register really is. So all the scenarios are false, and we're going to give you the truth. If my property is listed in the register, I must open it to the public. That is false. You have a lot of municipal buildings, Carnegie libraries, hotels that are listed and they are open to the public. Some places choose to have a home tour to show off their beautiful houses, but you don't have to. It's completely up to you. If my property is listed, I cannot paint it not what I want. That is not true. I would not recommend these colors or patterns. I don't think your neighbor would either, but the state and federal government does not care what color you paint your house. That is something that would happen at a local level. But lucky for you, Daphne and Jolynn also don't care what color you paint your house. You can paint it whatever you want. The only place where I'm aware of Middleton where that's an issue is in Middleton Hills, where they have a very strict architectural review board that reviews the paint colors. And I can say that because I was on it for 5 years. If my property is listed, I cannot change anything. This is your home. We don't want you to live in a house museum unless you want to. I just redid my bathroom and I am so excited there's no glass block in it. I want to make sure you have a comfortable bathroom, a comfortable kitchen, and you can decorate and design it whatever you want. Any building 50 years or older is eligible for listing. This is not true. So the Park Service has guidance that around 50 years, there's been enough time where you can step back and really evaluate the full context of our property. So we're looking at what was going on at that time, what were those architectural styles. This is why your district did not come up in the 90s, because ranch houses and colonial revival houses, they were all going on they were still going on. You still see colonial revival today, right? So there just wasn't enough time to evaluate that. But we do list properties that are under 50 years. It's not a hard, fast rule. We just listed 100 East in Milwaukee, which is a beautiful postmodern building. It's a style that is very uncommon and is being torn down a lot today. So we were really excited to list it at 35 years of age because it has amazing integrity and is an excellent example of the style. A moved building is not eligible for listing. That is not true. Living here in Wisconsin, if I've learned anything in my job, is that buildings move all the time. I don't think your houses have moved, but think about a farmstead, moving a barn around, using it for a different purpose. We listed a property that was a church and then became a funerary home. People are resourceful here. You don't want to waste things. So we do this all the time. A building on the register cannot be demolished. This is also false. This happens all the time because this is America. If you want to demolish your house, you can demolish your house whether it's listed or not. You can alter it, you can add additions. This is not something that the state or federal government regulates at all. Here in Cassville, you will see the Denniston House. It is significant because when we were a territory, they were trying to build a capital there. So that has a whole legislature area for everybody to meet, rooms for people to stay in. And after Governor Dewey finished his terms as governor, he came down and lived there. And so it was also significant because of Dewey. And unfortunately, it was torn down. And because we are located adjacent to a lake, I like to brag about our maritime archaeologists that work in our office. Here you'll see Tammy Thompson. If you're familiar with the canoes in Lake Mendota, she is the one who identified those. So we also list properties under the water. On the right is the F.J. King ghost ship, which we are listing on our next agenda. A property owner cannot delist their property from the register. So here, an example is an Ernest Flagg stone house It is a part of a historic district of stone houses. And this is the same house, but the new owners built a whole McMansion around it. That really alters it, right? This is when you don't have integrity anymore. It's no longer the design, setting, feeling that it once was. So we delisted the property because it was so severely altered. And that is something that the State Historic Preservation Office and the National Park Service can do only. Properties listed in the register must be reviewed by the Historic Preservation Commission. The Historic Preservation Commission here is the local landmarks commission. You have a member over here and a couple online as well. I am also a commission member, full disclosure, but I'm here purely in my professional setting right now. We don't review properties listed on the register. That is not what we do. That is something where they only look at local landmarks only. So it's really important to understand this is not the North Saxwood Pheasant Hills Historic District. We're going to need an acronym or something. Is going to be a state and national register listed district. There is no oversight for that. If you want to pull a permit and add a garage onto your property, you would do that the same way if you weren't listed. It all goes through the building permit office. So just to be clear about that, because that's one of the largest misconceptions, they are completely siloed. We are only looking at the state and national registers. So that was created by state and federal laws. It's administered by me at the State Historic Preservation Office and the National Park Service. There are no additional rules for owners. And it's a huge plus because it gets you eligible for credits, tax credits on the work you're doing to maintain your home. So totally different from that is the local designation that's created by a local ordinance, administered by the local government, and additional local review for owners if you're a landmark and you are not eligible for tax credits. So if you're asking what's in this for me, why do I want to list my property? It's official recognition from the National Park Service. It says you have a significant property. You have this whole collection of properties that really stand out for their architecture in their time period. It brings pride in your ownership. It contributes to your community's identity. And it really does get you eligible for tax credits. So I'm going to let Jason take over here because I know as a homeowner, maintenance on your property is not cheap at times, and he'll tell you all the perks.
Thanks, Elizabeth. Was anyone surprised by any of those misconceptions? You were. Okay. Anybody else? Yeah. Okay. Good. I mean, not good, but oh, really? What do we say there?
Property in the register triggers state and federal preservation laws that require federal, state, and government agencies to take additional consideration the effect of their plans or projects on the listed properties.
Right. That says there's state and federal laws for state and federal agencies only, not for property owners. So when a state or federal project has the potential to affect a historic property, that state or federal agency has to consider the effect of their actions on the historic property. So that has nothing to do with the property owner, and there's nothing that property owners have to do in those cases. So it acts as a protection of your property from state and federal actions. Does that make sense? Okay. Yeah, you're welcome. Yeah, we could.
Surprised me because I can recall when we lived in a historic home, we were not allowed to change the exterior of the building.
Where was that? Was that in? Okay. That is true in cases where your property is designated under a local historic preservation ordinance. The National Register triggers nothing. It may have been on both. That happens as well. A lot of historic districts are listed locally and on the National Register. And when that happens, review is triggered by the local ordinance, not the National Register. The National Register brings,
There were no tax credits available. But that was a number of years ago.
tax credits in Wisconsin have been available since
Yes, for it.
early to
Yes,
mid
for it.
90s for residences. Okay. Yeah.
And there is no desire from the commission or the city to list your district at a local level. This is purely National Register, just the way the Easton Historic District has been listed since the 90s.
Yeah.
If this area were listed on the national register, would it give some imprimatur to local government should they want to designate? I mean, they then turn around and say, well, Renee, it's on the national registers, and that's a good reason for us to designate.
That is 100% up to the local government, the local historic preservation commission, and the local processes for designating properties. There is absolutely zero linkage between the National Register program and local designation. They're completely separate programs, completely.
Yeah, the one thing about local designation, which is in our local historic preservation ordinance, is that to be listed as a local landmark, there has to be ownership consent.
I've got to pose some questions to you. I want you to raise your hand. Are you paid by the city of Middleton?
No,
No,
Are you paid by the county?
no.
no,
You're being,
no, we're employees of the State Historic Preservation Office.
And I am,
state employees out selling this program across southern Wisconsin.
We don't sell the program, we administer the program.
You've been in here before tonight with all the work that you say you've accomplished here already in Middleton.
I've been here, this is my second time here.
mhm.
The tiles or how many historic districts have you managed to liberate here in Middleton?
There's only the one historic district, and there's only one National Register historic district
When did this happen?
in the 1990s after a survey was conducted.
Middleton allowed you to come in and then they bought whatever you were selling.
We're not selling anything.
We're just offering
We're
it
not-
as an option. You can take it or you can leave it.
Because that's what you're doing today.
Okay. We administer the program. It's a federal program.
You benefit from whatever you're selling tonight.
We
don't
do not.
benefit.
We do not get sales off of districts. Well,
Do it all over the state.
Don't get paid?
We get paid. We do this all over this.
That's all. This is-
Okay.
This is a sale program too.
we have,
I think what we've heard enough, I've heard enough. I think you ought to listen to what the people.
absolutely. That's,
It's the time to ask questions.
yeah.
Anyone else have any questions?
Gave a very, very short time frame to get tonight in terms of when I got my card. I got it last Saturday. That's
This,
when I got my card. You know,
the city invited folks to this meeting.
got the card right.
We don't have anything to do with how the city invites folks to this meeting.
Somebody's not doing their job. But the point of the exercise, if we had more time, I think more of Saks Woods would have shown up tonight. Most of these people are Saks Woods. It's like somebody-
There actually will be a public meeting, There will be more public engagement if the city applies for this grant, if the city gets the grant.
So if I'm not comfortable with what I'm hearing, I should talk to my city fathers.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Absolutely. And as a part of the National Register process, the city applies for the grant and if they receive the grant and we have additional public meetings engaging the residents in the neighborhood, the property owners, then you would get notification of all the listing process. So when it's going to go to the review board, where it's going to be listed on the state register, you haven't. Oh, I'm sorry. Well, what I'm getting down to is you get an opposition letter. So you have an option to sign the letter and send it in and say, I don't want to. Well, no, it's a formal form. It's a different form. This is just an early step in the process.
So this is just the first step, and this is just information to tell you what this is about. You know, if you're not comfortable, if you're not supportive of it, you can, let us know tonight. You can email the city, you can email me.
That part of the program, then.
So this is, yeah, this is just the very first meeting to tell you guys what this is. And then if you're comfortable, with moving forward, then, that triggers the next step of what Elizabeth was saying with, opposition letters and all of that.
We want to make sure you have a full understanding. That's why we take the time to go through the slides so you know what you could possibly be getting into. Yeah.
Could you please maybe helpful to restate the purpose of National Historic District?
The purpose?
The National Register is an incentive-based program. It is not regulatory. That means it comes with, as Elizabeth outlined earlier, it does not come with any extra. It does not come with any extra rules. It does not come with any extra permitting. Nothing. You can bulldoze your property once this historic district goes through. You could bulldoze your property without any extra permitting, except maybe the city would probably require a demolition permit. I don't know.
The same they would for any other building requesting to be demolished.
But it would add zero extra permitting, zero extra rules, zero extra regulation. Yeah.
Maybe it'd be helpful to restate what the incentives are.
Tax credits.
That's the next slide that I was going to get into.
I just like to restate that question because I think there's another dimension to it. And that's what's the public interest? What are the real aims and where's the public good? How do the people of the United States or Middleton benefit from this designation?
That's a really good question.
And Jason, can you just repeat the question for people who are on the
Sure. I think maybe you can restate the question better than I can.
Well, I just restating the question about the purpose of the national program for National Historic Site designation. What is ultimately the interest, the public interest in making these designations?
Good question. Anyone have an immediate answer to that? It's kind of a philosophical answer, honestly, and it gets to. You want to try?
Well, I would say that in some of the public meetings I've been involved with here in the city, there's been citizens, your neighbors have come up and stated, we like living in Middleton. We like that there are historic buildings and it's not Verona. We like that there are places where we have character and historic buildings build character. They remind us of our past and the people who came before us and what they did. And there's a lot of history there. I got a call from a resident today who wanted to tell me about the history of the area downtown. There's a lot of pride that comes in the community. You have people that are interested in it. And if you're not that interested in history or architecture, that's fine too. But there are people who are, and it's their thing, and they want to honor these places. They want to honor the architects who designed them, one of which is here today. And you want to see these beautiful places that have this interesting development and be able to tell its story in addition to tax credits.
Many communities use these historic districts and historic architecture for placemaking purposes. Cities use them for attracting tourism dollars, attracting visitors to a city. People like to go to cities that have an identity.
It's what Visit Middleton has been doing and trying to bring people downtown and come here and come shop at our shops and see what our downtown area, historic downtown area is like.
You indicated in your opening remarks that the sidewalk opportunity for the city of Middleton would be tied to whether or not it is made a historic district. Did I hear that wrong?
I'm not sure I understand the sidewalk bit of that.
I think that everybody here is here partly because of the city wanting to install sidewalks. And I thought that I heard from you that the sidewalks, that's how this started to roll out.
No, yeah, I actually don't know anything about sidewalks. That's never been mentioned in the Landmarks Commission meetings, but that is interesting to know. I will say this all came about because the city received funding from the Park Service to do a historic survey. So it was to identify places of historic importance located within our city boundaries. They did this about 30 years ago, and it's standard practicing procedure to go and do that again every 25, 30 years because a lot of time has gone by. And now we've stepped back and we can appreciate those ranch houses and those mid-century residences that make up your neighborhood.
Yeah, and I will just address, so the sidewalk program is a separate, program by our Public Works Department, and they go, into there are 8 different areas in the city, and each year they'll, put in sidewalks if there aren't sidewalks, redo sidewalks that are, falling apart and all of that. And so that's a completely separate city program. I think that might have been triggered because Elizabeth said, if the Wisconsin DOT, the Department of Transportation, wanted to come in and widen the roads, that would trigger, something at the federal level or, at the state level, because those are, state and federal programs. And so if the city were to take, we get a lot of grants to redo streets and all of that from the State Department. If we were to come into this neighborhood and, redo a street with that funding, that would trigger. And so they would, look at and see your properties and, want to try and avoid, making an impact in that sense. But I think the sidewalk program, we pay from the state, from state or from our local taxes and all of that. And so I'm not sure if that would trigger anything. And yeah, that's just a completely separate program altogether, the sidewalks. Yeah.
This goes really to the heart of the concern of a lot of people on the street who I would say 97.5% of them totally the city's attempt 2 years ago to put in sidewalks and did and voiced similar opposition 10 years before and 20 years before, and yet they never seem to quite hear us. And they keep coming back and coming back and coming back. And now you can point to, it's not us, it's some other agency. But the question I have for you goes right to the heart of this. If this designation can impact federal or state action, can it impact strictly local action?
Only if they are receiving state or federal funding.
Okay, well, the city of Middleton always receives state and federal funding, but it may not be relevant to sidewalks. So they'll say, you don't get any
Well,
from the federal or state government. governments and got sidewalks, except all money is fungible.
Yeah. Well, when you're looking at an adverse effect, which is what would happen if they received state or federal funding to add sidewalks, then the architectural historian would come in who's evaluating this effect would say, well, there aren't any sidewalks there. And then they're recreating sidewalks. So that would not be original feature to the neighborhood.
I think this is such an important issue because the sidewalk issue kept coming back year after year after year on this, particularly in the one section of.
A lot of people are here
That
because
has
of
never,
that.
had
If you aren't
sidewalks.
hearing it,
And everybody, so many people in that area enjoyed the rural nature of that particular area, and then to have sidewalks come into it was going to change that immensely, and, you know, now we see, well, maybe if there's a dedication to the register of this being a historic place, maybe it'll be a way of keeping the sidewalks out, so that people in who've been here a long time are thinking about that connection, right away. And, so, you know, you'll hear it over and over again, because this is an issue that's been with us for quite a while.
Yeah.
This one section of Saks Woods anyway.
Yeah, I'm just gonna recap for people on the Zoom because I think it's hard for them to hear everyone, but there are a lot of comments about putting in sidewalks along, I believe is it Columbus, yes. And, you know, because the city does our sidewalk program, I believe it's around every 8 years. So when you're saying, you know, 10 or 20 years, that sounds about right on when we would, you know, come back to, you know, do the sidewalk program in your neighborhood. And so you know, there are a lot of concerns about putting in sidewalks, and then, you know, if we get this, you know, state or national register, you know, could that prevent putting in sidewalks? And as Elizabeth was saying, it's really only if we receive federal or state funding to be redoing those sidewalks is, you know, when that national register designation could, you know, maybe prevent something. And when we do get state and federal funding and grants, you know, we have to do a lot of reporting to them. And so that, you know, through that reporting is how, you know, we would find if there were any, you know, local or, you know, if there were any historic districts that we were impacting. That's all part of the reporting and grant application process beforehand that the city would have to do. So, yeah.
I think you need to allow the people to vote, as we're getting ready to leave here, you know, their opinion, up or down.
Actually, it's a good point. One of the reasons we do this meeting early on in the process is to get a sense from property owners whether there's support or opposition to this. Because if 50% or more of property owners say that they oppose this, we won't forward it to the National Park Service.
No, it will
And
not
the National
move
Park
forward.
Service wouldn't list it. So tonight, we usually just want to take a straw poll. The official poll will happen later, but we want to get a sense of whether or not there's support or opposition to this. But before I take this straw poll, I want to go through this one slide.
You guys have more questions.
Sure.
You still take them?
Absolutely. We'll take questions, but I want to get you some more information. This is something that you need to know. If this district is listed in the National Register, you all will have access to state tax credits. It's a 25% credit to your income tax obligation, to your state income tax obligation. That's equal to 25% of expenses on things like roofing, siding, furnaces, electrical, plumbing. These are the parameters. You have to meet federal design standards. This is the only time that you have to meet federal design standards, is if you use tax credits, because that's public money. So there are strings attached to that, and there are standards attached to that. They're not onerous. The standards are designed to retain the historic character of your house. So if your intent is to retain the historic character of the house, you can get 25% tax credits.
And that's state.
That's a state
Correct.
tax credit, correct?
To homeowners. Yeah.
At one point, and I've been in the tax business for a few years, but at one point, those state historical tax credits were in some ways financially constrained, I believe, by the state. The pot of money was not big enough, and they weren't fully paying them out, and the legislature wasn't fully appropriating money.
That was for commercial tax credits. So we are very fortunate. Not every state offers this, the 25% for homeowners, but then there's also 20% for state credits for commercial properties and 20% matching for federal.
And then the legislature has had these conversations about the commercial credit. But we're talking about the homeowner credit. That's a state credit. The commercial credit is a state and federal credit. So setting the commercial credit aside, which has gone through some changes, the homeowner's credit has not gone through changes. And these are the kinds of things that you can get the 25% credit for. Masonry, roof repair. So a $20,000 roof job, you can get a $5,000 credit for that, and it's a pretty simple process. Yes.
This granting of historical site raised my valuation of my house yet again forever.
That's entirely up to the city as well. There's no direct link between National Register designation and property taxes.
I'm kind of wondering, just you're representing the state. States like Illinois, when somebody is, I don't know, over 65, I've 94, but at that point, they don't continually get evaluation upward for seniors in Illinois and other states. Has the state of Wisconsin even considered stopping these escalating evaluations so that a person doesn't have to look for someplace to live? Because I'm telling you right now, it's getting too expensive for me, a homeowner, this to live here. What have you done to us?
Again,
I came here, what, 28 years ago or whatever, to retire. Because the place I lived was too expensive tax-wise. And here we are. So if this program is going to raise my evaluation even more, you've got me right here.
So the question.
I'm going down fast because I have been looking for someplace to live.
Sure. I just want to repeat your statement and question for the folks online. And the question is, will the valuation of my home will increase with taxes?
and again, the answer is there's no direct connection between a historic district designation and property taxes. Property taxes is entirely 100% the purview of the local government. And this has nothing to do with that. So, yes.
I guess I beg to disagree a little bit. I think what you would find is the realtors in this area, which are already selling our particular area as desirable, will take every plus they can find to up the asking price for our house. And if they say it's the areas are listed in the National Register, you can bet dollars and donuts that they will say that, and they will use that to try to drive the price, the market value of the house up. Now, why should we care about that locally, not just individually? As somebody who served on the Middleton School Board, one of our biggest problems is declining enrollment. And one of the biggest problems in our particular neighborhood is the only families that are coming in are either people with lots of money and older kids, or retirees with lots of money, but not many young families. And as a result, Middleton schools are losing enrollment. And when they lose enrollment, they lose state aid, and that drives up local property taxes. I mean, it's state school funding is very complicated, but if you were to ask anybody from the school district here, they would tell you their biggest problem is declining enrollment,
because they're pricing young families out of the school district.
And I agree with you. Having two children in the public school system and a property owner here, I've seen my taxes in those resolutions, so I can hear that. But you're lucky that you're standing in front of Jason Tisch. He is our education outreach coordinator as well. He just recently met with Sprinkman Real Estate to inform them of the differences between local designation and national and state registers, and for them to be aware that people want to live in these neighborhoods because they can receive tax credits.
Yes, we do train realtors in these same things to understand the difference between National Register, the carrot, all tax credits, and local designation, the rules and the extra permitting. What they do with that information is up to them. Yeah.
I want to tell you, I think this is very interesting, and
Good. We like working with smart crowds.
Are any one of you or all of you trained historians?
Yes.
Yes,
Yes,
we went to school to be architectural historians.
Good. Because I think there's a history here too, 60 years in the program, going back to the Great Society and 1966. And I'm interested in knowing what you know about studies that have been done, best that's out there, that you could recommend to us to get prepared for reviewing these, and even knowing what the questions are, with respect to the history of the program itself, specifically designated historic residential neighborhoods in the United States, similar or dissimilar to what we have here in Middleton. And what's been the significance of getting this designation over the last 60 years to A, the residents within those districts, and B, the rest of the people? What's been the history of this program with respect to results? Its significance. That's a word.
It is significance, and this is where we can nerd out a little bit, because when you have National Register nominations, you dive into that local community. You learn all about Whittlesey and how Middleton was developed with the railroad coming in 1856, having a depot, starting as a village, eventually growing as a city. You learn the history of the community. It is fully detailed. You also learn about the people within the community. You learn about the architects within the community who lived in the neighborhood. You're learning about the significance of where you live. And it details the architectural styles and why that is architecturally significant. So this is a public document that is kept at the National Archives so that people have public access to it to learn about our community's history and the significance within it.
I'm saying that there are social scientists who study this sort of thing. You've got the Dean of Place Cities, just passed away a couple of years ago, Ethan Kwan, at the University of Wisconsin. Nobody on the planet more knowledgeable about the significance of place. And you have socialists, people, geography departments, landscape architecture, who have documented the results of the program. Can you refer us, can you give us citations as to, what do we have for our homework?
I would love to develop a class on that.
No, but can you recommend any books, any articles that,
Sure.
Was later.
Sure.
We can give you all our textbooks from graduate and undergraduate school.
There are lots of studies. There are a lot of studies on the economic impacts.
Yeah, serious critical impact studies.
Yeah, there are
beyond the people doing proposing.
Yeah, if you'd like me to collect some, we can come up with some.
Yeah, we can provide them to Daphne.
I have a whole collection of economic impact studies where a city, usually bigger cities than Middleton, cities like St. Louis and bigger cities of that size, have studied the economic impacts of historic districts. There's a consulting firm in DC called Place Economics that has done hundreds of these local studies on economic impacts. I be happy to link you to a dozen of those.
You,
Getting old, so we don't have time for that.
no.
Twice the best, the most intelligent, most informed and objective studies. We'd appreciate it.
Absolutely.
Economic impacts or social impacts. Okay. All right.
Exclusionary zoning.
How are we gonna get a hold of you?
Well, I'm going to
Daphne.
put our contact information up so that if you have additional questions when you go home, please feel free to reach out at us. We are public servants like Daphne and Jolyn. Our job is to answer questions. Our job is to go out and educate the public on these programs. So please write down our phone numbers. You can call us at the State Historic Preservation Office. Well, yeah, yeah.
We bring any business cards?
Yeah, we have a couple business cards as well that you're welcome to take and
Come up and take a picture after we're done.
yeah. Thank you.
Tara Randall, 2505 Nina Court. I was born and raised in this neighborhood by my parents, Cheryl and Doug Randall. And I'm actually really excited about this possibility because coming home over the decades of my life to this neighborhood, it's been precious. I'm even seeing two of my, neighborhood hooligans when I was a kid here. And so what really inspires me is about preserving the character. And, I see the new character of the multifamily housing, which obviously we have a need for, but how it's very carbon copy, and to see it come close to our neighborhood was kind of like this gut wrenching feeling. And so for me to see this when we're growing up where there's three courts, Nina, Pinta, and Santa Maria, and on each court there were these amazing houses that stuck out in the blending of the whole community, and they were all designed by these fabulous architects. One was my father, the other Ralph Jackson, and the other George Solner, where we have someone else living in that house. And so there's so much character in this neighborhood, and I just am so grateful, for the influence of the architecture from, the architects that I've known personally. And Al Larson was another architect in the area. So there's such an appreciation that I have for blending it with Parisi Park and the Pheasant Branch Creek. And, I appreciate the questions about the economic impact because we're all facing that. And I think they're really valid questions to have clarified. And I love the whole part about showing the social significance of designating these areas. But I just wanted to at least say my piece, that I just have deep appreciation for my neighbors and, the newer neighbors who I don't know, but the character of this neighborhood. I'm honored that you're actually looking at it.
And
Yeah. Thank you for saying that. And she does bring up a really good point. When you think about the new developments, you go down High Road and they're building all that new housing to try to bring in some of these younger families, as well as other retired folks and single people who live there. But the way this district was developed to incorporate the environment within it, such a great point, because you have that bike trail going back there and the houses are really opening up to it, and you have the park, and that's what's forming that sense of community where you're engaging, you're going to the park, you're walking your dog along the bike path. This is a part of sense of place.
And I want to reiterate that the National Register does not compel you to preserve that. The National Register will incentivize you with tax credits to preserve that if you want to. So it's a fabulous neighborhood. It's a beautiful neighborhood, architect design houses. But again, the National Register doesn't compel you to preserve that. It will only give you tax credits to do it if you want to. And it will not tell you what you can and can't do. So that's that. I like to drive that point home at these meetings.
We have to put that as long as the city doesn't come in and do.
Again, that's up to the city, completely up to the city.
You got to talk to the city about that.
Typically, so I'll tell you, I work with 78 communities like this around the state. Every single one of them has a provision in their ordinance that they have the authority to designate properties over the objection of an owner. 99.9% of the time, they will not. Because the village board, the city council won't go there. They don't want to go to that territory and designate over the objection of owners. Even though they have the authority to, they won't do it 99.9% of the time. In the extreme cases that they do, it's buildings that are literal landmarks that everybody loves, everybody agrees on, and it's sold to a private person who wants to demolish it or to radically change it, and the whole community comes to the rescue and says, "Hey, wait a second! This is important to our community, to the identity of our community. Don't do this." So in those cases, that's when you see local communities using that ordinance to literally protect landmarks. But the vast majority of the time, a local government won't do that over the objection of an owner, even though they have the authority to.
We've
But again, that's local designation. We're talking about National Register. Yes.
Well, you're really opening the wound here because many of us know that not only has there been a sidewalk fight going on in for 50 years, but as some of you will recall, what has happened to the conservancy behind Columbus Drive is a tragedy. The city has clear cut trees, has mowed stuff down. It has actually increased the stream flow, so the erosion is going to be greater. If you go to Percy Park right now, the whole hillside has been just sliced. And so, pardon some of us, but the problem with us is not the federal government and state governments. The city does not have a lot of credibility with us because they did not preserve our wild area behind us when we almost unanimously went to the council and said, we don't want this. And now they said it'll be more safe. We have 25-mile-per-hour electric bikes zooming back and forth behind our houses. It's now more like a county road than a Crescent Country lawn. So
I could second this so much because I work very, very hard to preserve the Conservancy, and many of you know that. There are 4 of us here out of the initial 8 people who set up to preserve the Conservancy. Myself, my husband Doug, and Maria and Ralph Jackson. There were 4 couples and 8 of us, and we started the Middleton Conservation Committee, and we worked so hard to preserve the creek corridor, set it aside with the nature reserve, and sign that you see there. And then this moved on. We worked with Wally Bowen. He was wonderful. He just became an environmentalist along with us and went ahead and was able to, and that was when the city was just becoming formed, to establish the zoning for Conservancy. We got into the marsh and the zone Conservancy, worked with Ed Hickman, got Payne County to, to have Conservancy zoning there too. And then, of course, we had this very large rain in 2018 that just caused huge damage down there. But now that's been, I mean, a lot of people are very excited about all the work that went down there, but now it's more like a national park. The natural quiet area that we have there isn't there. And we're feeling it where we live because the animals come up to our place as refuge now. Yeah. And we have lots of deer and turkeys and, mink and, on and on and on, groundhogs and whatever. Raccoons were always there, but it did change the area, and we worked very hard to keep it in a more natural state. And we had other opportunities too. We had, well, as he's referring to the times probably we had to go in to say, no, we don't want to pave, and, lots of petitions and all. But sometimes the improvements make changes that are not necessarily for the best. And now it's a different experience to be next to this great valley. But initially, and one of the points I was going to make was that people who settled along our section of Saxwood were very, very conscious of the creek area and wanted to preserve the land there. Some are there just for scenic reasons, others because they enjoy the conservancy. But I think people in that area, in our area, had a sense of value, a really deep sense of their values. And I think that contributed to the intact community that we have there, as you talk about in architecture. Each family created their own home, each family created their own landscaping, and yet there was a deep caring in this part of our community. I can speak for that part, and people from the rest of the area can speak for theirs, and I think that's what's carried over. And they helped to make this an intact architectural community that you're looking at there. So, and why it hasn't changed a lot. And I will say one more thing, and that is I grew up in Shorewood Hills, and I grew up in an architect's designed home. And the first people after we sold, it was sold, just did a beautiful job of renovation there and had great integrity with the original architect. And then it was sold to the developer. And the developer created an entirely different type of feel on the inside. And if that, and then I often think that Shorewood Hills could have had some kind of protective district. Maybe some of what we're seeing on there would never have happened in Shorewood. Of course, as those of you who drive through there, you know how much Shorewood Hills is changing, and there are beautiful homes going in, but the natural, original Shorewood Hills, of course, has changed. So I do see a lot of advantages to having this type of designation.
Yeah, thank you for that.
I just wanted to, I really appreciate what you brought to the opportunity anyway, very much you're bringing to the city. I don't know how many of anyone here, I'm sure they've traveled around the country and see these historic sites and everything else that brings a history or an architectural design. Go back to the Imperial Hotel in Japan. You can go anywhere to find something of a monument that's not necessarily cast in bronze, but is an existing structure that somebody has created, and it has some value to it in the sense that it has history. And I think the preservation is not necessarily the preservation of the building or the other thing. It's the thought or the history that went behind it to preserve what we had before all those that came before us. I'm not sure there's, well, Cheryl and I are in the 90s now, and so we've been in Middleton all that time. So Middleton has been a good place for us. And I think this talking right now about what you are presenting to us is something we need to hear. The taxes and the other things that come up are not really copacetic with why you came here for us. So maybe we continue with that a little bit.
Yeah, absolutely. There's going to be a survey report that's done in a couple months, and they're going to come out and talk about the history of the community and the people within the community and the architects of the community and who they are and why we have these significant places here. So I recommend y'all come out when Daphne posts that public meeting as well.
We do a lot of these. We've done about 5 of them in the last couple of months. And I just want to say, I really appreciate how you all are connecting the dots and asking really good questions. It's kind of unusual. We don't typically get this much dot connecting and question asking. And I just want to commend you all for thinking this through and really thinking about the implications and asking the questions. Yes.
One last question. You're talking about National Register, state. I would like to see the commitment of the city of Middleton towards this, because from my observation of our own little circle, they seem hell bent on destroying what we're trying to preserve. And I'm thinking of my own circle. I work very hard to try and keep it up as I was told to do by the city council here. that I could do and I have time to do. But they seem like they want to destroy that in any way they can, and now we're looking forward to resurfacing in Columbus and the circles. And I'm wondering, is there gonna be anything left that, for instance, are they going to throw all their asphalt again into my circle?
Great questions, great concerns.
It's a real pain in the neck.
Yeah, I get it. I don't have answers to that, unfortunately.
No, but we have to know that the
Yeah.
city is with you.
Well, they're
So we may as well give up.
On this, the city is with us because they've initiated this. The city has initiated this and asked us for the grant funding because there's grant funding available for this. Again, it's not connected to the street stuff and the sidewalk stuff, although you all are connecting the dots in a really interesting way, a really good way. I I can't address those questions. Maybe Daphne can, and there's probably going to be other public meetings about that too. Um,
It's the tree cutting, the paving, the doubling of the creek pavement, the building of the big bridges, just all that they've tried to improve. And what I think we're trying to convey here is the city doesn't have a lot of credibility along our street because every time we have engagement with the city, they are saying, we're gonna cut down your trees, we're gonna pave over your gardens, and we're going to increase the speed of the traffic on your path behind your house. It's not.
No, I hear your point. Yeah.
There's a little
Yeah.
trust issue.
And so with the city's involvement in this, that trust issue transfers over. Is that what you're saying?
So I will chime in now as the city because we've been hearing a lot of comments about, you know, what the work that the city has done. And I mean, obviously I can't make any promises right now, but I will say that it does sound like there is interest in possibly a local designation now because that would, no?
I am totally against it.
Okay.
100%. I don't want the city involved.
Okay. Oh, so then,
In fact, I want the city out of this.
okay. Well, and so the only thing that the city would be doing is we're getting the grant funding for this, and then we would hire an outside consultant to do all of the, you know, to register all of the homes and all of that. So that's really just the facilitation that the city has. Other than that, you know, we would only, as you know, they've been saying, we would only get involved if there was a local designation, and then that's when you would have to, you know, go through that city process with the Historic Preservation Commission and all of that.
We didn't have to hire those people to do what you just described. We wouldn't have to pay for it. Because money we don't have in the treasury presently.
Well, it would be paid for with a grant from our office, which is, and if you're interested, that money comes from the federal government. It comes from offshore oil leases. It's not even tax money. It comes from offshore oil leases, and it's the National Park Service gives it to all 50 states. Offices like ours distribute it to local governments.
There's always the money. There's always the money.
Well, you have the money. If you receive this grant, if you're interested, that money's already allocated. So it's just the next step is hearing from y'all. Are you interested in this? Is this something?
Yeah, let's do a straw poll. Who, after knowing what you know, no added rules with the National Register. This is not about local designation. You would have access to tax credits. Again, it's incentive based, not regulatory. Knowing all that, who would support nominating this district unofficially? That's fine. That's fine. So yes, maybe. Who's maybes? Okay. And who's a no way? No way.
And I will say there are 4 people who are raising their hands on the Zoom.
Oh, thank you online. We haven't forgotten about you.
Did they raise their hands in support or?
Yeah, I think there are 4 in support.
Okay, and one opposed? Any other opposed? 2 opposed.
I'm a maybe.
Okay.
I find out a whole lot more.
Sure. Contact us, contact Daphne with questions. We can answer any questions.
Yes, we have cards up here that you can take a picture or you can take one. You can also go to wisconsinhistory.org. That is our website. We are located within the Wisconsin Historical Society, and we have a whole page dedicated to the National Register, another page dedicated to tax credits. So we have links there for you to learn more in more detail. Would you like the microphone?
I bought the house in, no, I bought the house in 1968, June of 60, from Lester Six, who was the principal developer of the cut as a home leased or rented to this fellow that was graduating from the University of Wisconsin. So when I got in there, that guy was gone. So all I dealt with all the time was Lester Six, from the initial offer to the closing. About 15, 20 years later, I'm out in the yard on Columbus Drive, the red house. And a guy parks over in the conservancy area across from where Breakers live now. And he's walking over to me and I'm in the yard. He said, "Can I talk to you?" And I said, "Sure." He said, "I used to live here in this house. My name is John Abbott. Abbott Drugs. Can I go in and see my old house? Because my wife and kids were raised there." And he said, "I'd like to go through the house because we were there for a number of years." And so I met John Abbott. Long and short story is, last week, John Abbott's company, Abbott Drugs, my dad had a drugstore downtown Middleton years ago. And the outfit is the colored polar guard. The irony is nobody but John Abbott and I know the story, because he got his car, went back to Chicago, and Abbott Drugs got famous. They were famous already, but they really got famous since they bought the color guard. Okay, that's my story.
That's a great story, and we would love to add that to your property record.
Thank you all for having us.
My question, what comes next? We got this card, we came to a meeting, we want to know what's next.
Next steps is
So the next step for funding the National Register nomination will be up to Daphne and the city. They're gonna take the feedback that they got tonight. It looks like we've got more support than opposition. So Daphne and the city will apply for the grant to our office. The deadline is December 12th. If the city is awarded the grant, that will be in February. We will notify grant awardees in February. The city will be notified in February. Sometime next summer, they would hire a consultant to write the nomination. Depending on that consultant's timeline, the nomination could be done by fall. It could be done by this time next year. Could be done, it depends on the timeline of the consultant. But the nomination would likely be done about a year from now. Then it has to go through something that Elizabeth will talk about.
I review all the nominations and edit it to make sure it's following the Park Service's standards. And at that point, once we feel like it's comfortable, which we do with our consultants, we then present it to the State Historic Preservation Review Board. And that is the government appointed committee that would list it officially on the state register. And then it takes a couple more months for it to go and get listed at the National Register through the National Park Service. So over a year.
Year.
Point person that we would encourage next.
And we encourage you to talk to your neighbors. Let them know what you learned tonight. Let them know what we've discussed. Just feel that knowledge is power so that you can make the decision that you want to make. It's your home. So we encourage you to do that and to reach out to Daphne and Jason and I at the State Historic Preservation Office.
Yeah, and again, this decision will be made on the feedback that we get from property owners. We got some tonight. We'd love to get more from from owners who are not here tonight. If you have neighbors and friends who would like to contact us or Daphne and vote, that's great. We'd love to have the feedback.
And we'll provide Daphne with some of those resources we talked about earlier.
And this meeting has been recorded on Zoom, and so we'll post that to the city's website. We can post the slides as well.
Thank you all for your great
Thank
questions.
you. Yeah, thank you for your time.
Oh.
I would love to hear about them if you want to write them down. It was lovely speaking.
Oh, yeah.